Everyone who met Florence Lee Timoy talks about the effect that she had on them. She was softly spoken and she never put herself forward, and yet once met, never forgotten. And when she came over to England in 1984, she met with the then Archbishop of Canterbury, Robert Runcie, and the debate about women priests in the Church of England had begun. And after meeting her, someone asked him, so what do you think now, after meeting Florence Lee Timoy? And he said, who am I to say who God can call? And people speak of this immense warmth, generosity, but also not only a spiritual, loving warmth, but she was practical all her life. She just got down, and if someone was hungry, she brought them food. That's the kind of person she was. But she was also modest, humble, and deep down, incredibly strong. If she felt something was the right thing to do, she could do it.
I look at the courage that Florence had in her life, but what I've recognized is that it was actually built on a place of personal prayer. There's this wonderful story I read that when she was in a boat with some others trying to get from, I can't remember where it was, but one place to another, and they hit a storm. The people in the boat who wouldn't profess to be believers in Christ turned to her and said, would you pray? And she prayed. And of course, they got to the destination safely. And I read that afterwards, those people who were in that boat were so impacted by the simple and yet profound faith that Florence had, as exemplified in her prayer, that they too found a relationship with the Lord. And so that reminds me, even when things are hard right now and the storms that I go through, I look to her as an example and a reminder to pray.
Lee Timoy had been inspired by the Spirit of God and was carrying out a ministry, and so he arranged to meet her in Free China, and then they spent some 24 hours or so thinking and praying through it, because my father at least was conscious of what it meant internationally, and my father knew that she had conducted baptism class in secondary school, and 72 children, young adults, had been come forward for baptism. So she was a remarkable pastor. And so he reckoned, well, she must be recognized as fully as a priest in the Church of God. And in that remote village, with no press release, with no photographs, with no record of how many were there, no publicity, and so that church-changing event took place there in China.
When I was a little girl, I think I was born in Hong Kong, so even in Hong Kong I've heard about her, and I think she was just so very brave. Bishop Christopher Hall ordained her as a women priest, and that's amazing, I think. She's an absolute inspiration for all women, priest and lay ministry. She gave up her life to serve God, and she followed her calling.
I first became aware of Florence when I was literally in the middle of my discernment about whether to become a priest in the Church of England. And it really couldn't have come at a better time. I was at a point where I hadn't seen people with a face like mine in leadership. I've been an Anglican since I was a baby, and I cannot remember ever seeing someone who was Chinese. And so the thought of being a leader in the church never really, realistically, came to me. But whilst I was studying theology, I did come across this book, and when I read about her story, I was absolutely just encouraged. I was inspired by her example, and I think that was the moment where I felt, yes, there is space for people like me who have Chinese heritage in the Church of England, and she gave me the courage to go ahead.
The significance for me of Florence Lee Timoy is about that verse from Thessalonians which says, God who calls is faithful. And I think she was very faithful in who she was, and those who enabled her to live that ministry, and what that means for so many women and girls throughout the world, to go on becoming the person God has called us to be.
I'm so thankful to God. I know I'm not a diamond. Beautiful diamonds experience many cuttings and polishing. I'm just an earthen vessel with God's treasure inside me.